The City of Phoenix holds community budget hearings throughout April, allowing residents to comment and make suggestions on the city manager's trial budget before final decisions are made. This public discussion is among the reasons the city's budget so closely matches the community's highest priorities each fiscal year.
All right, we're about ready to start the budget meeting here for Ahwatukee Foothills. This is one of two budget hearings that we're going to have in this district. We've got one here, and then next Tuesday night, we have another budget hearing at Madison School District on 16th Street. And so we've got two for this district because we have two areas of the district. Usually, that's how we had it set up. I want to thank everyone for coming out today. Appreciate the efforts that you've taken to, basically you've got your family, your friends, there's other things you could be doing, but you've taken an interest in the city of Phoenix, and you've taken an interest in the budget process, and we appreciate it. Thank you for coming out. This is one of 14 budget hearings we're going to have throughout the city of Phoenix. Remember, this is a trial budget. That doesn't mean, so the budget you're about to see, it's going to be about a 20-minute presentation, Mario. And this is Mario Paniagua. I'm going to turn it over to him in just a second. But the presentation is about 20 minutes, a little bit longer. It's more detailed than it was in the past, so it'll give you some areas that you can cover, some areas you can comment on. And then after that, we'll go right into the questions from individuals. And so if you've not filled out a card, I think right before the meeting started, you heard me say, I'd like to have these cards filled out. But if you could fill out a card if you would like to speak. And generally in these situations, we get groups. Like we have firefighters, we have police here, we have other city employees here as well. What you can do, you can have one spokesperson come up, or you can have all of you come up. If it's going to be the same messaging, then you can all stand up. It's a variety of things that you can do. It's your choice of how you want to handle that. The city of Phoenix prides itself in the budget process, and as you can see, for the audience that's here, we have generally about 40 or 50 people in the room here. Appreciate all that time. And for those that cannot come here, because there are individuals in our community that can't come, we have the video here that's just played over a period of time. I think over the next few weeks it's going to be played so that people can see and have the opportunity to see the budget presentation. Again, there's going to be parts of this budget that you may agree with, you may not disagree with, but this is your hearing, your opportunity to comment on that. And I have seen changes occur. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, I think it is, just to give you an example of how a change can occur, the city of Phoenix really didn't even have the issue of bike paths on the radar screen. But the cycling community came out in large numbers, quite large numbers, and painted a case as to why, safety-wise and quality of life-wise, the city of Phoenix needed to have an investment, a capital investment, in making sure that there was connectivity within the cycling community. I know it doesn't sound like a big issue for some people when you're looking at other things, but when you look at the safety factor, the issues that impacted certain areas and people that were in our community, and basically the multimodal community that we have, then the city of Phoenix literally changed the way the budget process was put together. There are a couple things in this budget right now that I'm going to have some issues with, and I think that the monies could be used in other areas. For example, I think, how much is it for body cameras? About 11 million? We have $11 million set aside for body cameras. I'm a supporter of body cameras for police officers. I like it, just giving you one part of multiple parts of this budget that I'm going to at least have an influence or have a discussion on. But I think that there are other areas. $11 million seems like a lot of money to be putting into body cameras when that's not what I'm hearing from the public. I hear people say, for those police officers, not that I don't dislike the fire, I love you guys too, you guys are great guys, but when I hear from the public, and primarily when it comes to police officers, they want to make sure our police officers are taken care of because they know that we've been short 500 or 600 officers in the city of Phoenix. They know that there's an incredible amount of stress put on them today. And so from my perspective, I think that that $11 million can be better used in other things that the public would like to see rather than in the body cameras. I think we have already got about 300 body cameras, 150 that the city of Phoenix is paying for, and then 150 that the federal grants are paying for. Maybe we can double that, but I don't know if it's necessary to bring in a whole $11 million. And then it also means about 30 to 40 new staff members to support the body cameras. It just doesn't seem logical. That's just one example of many that you're going to see up here, so feel free to make any comments. I'm going to turn it over to Mario Paniagua. Again, thank you for coming out.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Everyone can turn off their phones. That'd be good too.
I just have a few housekeeping items I want to cover before we get into the video, and then we'll take the comments for all those who submitted cards. We do have an interpreter here. If you could just come up and introduce yourself, that would be fantastic. Also, while she's coming up, I'll just mention this is the budget pamphlet that we've got available for more detailed information. Please pick one of these up at the front of the room if you've been able to do that. And then, as Councilman DeCiccio mentioned, these are the speaker cards. If you're intent on speaking, please fill one of these out, or if you could fill one out and just submit your comments, written comments on the card, and we'll put those in the record. If you could just go ahead and...
Hello, my name is Kate Franco. Para las personas que necesiten ayuda en español, yo voy a estar disponible en la parte de atrás. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. So we also do have several city staff members here in the room. If you need assistance on specific questions from several departments, we do have experts here. They're here on their own time. Nobody's getting paid any additional pay for them to be here, so we appreciate everyone who's here. This is one of the more complex budgets because there are very complex issues going on. One of the more complex issues in this year's budget that hasn't really been there in years past is the debt service and the issue with property tax, and that's going to be explained when you watch the video. And it's really about trying to find the right balance between all those pieces with service, compensation, and the city's revenue. The other thing to point out is in your budget pamphlets is the trial budget, but there are also alternative options that are made available as well for additional information. So those are in here for review to examine as well. So those are on pages 7 through 10 for consideration and discussion if the recommended option is not desirable. I do want to mention that the mayor's office is represented here. Nicole Pastor from the mayor's office is here representing the mayor. And so with that, I do want to just point out also before we get into the video, the comments that are made here tonight are all going to go into minutes, a set of minutes that are going to go to all of the council members. So Councilman DeCiccio is here to hear your comments directly. Those comments will also be forwarded to the full mayor and city council. The video is also going to be posted online on YouTube for anyone to be able to access the meeting and view the meeting anytime that they want to. So that's just an important piece. So that's why we have, when speakers speak, we'll have them come up to the microphone there, or if someone needs assistance, we do have these roaming mics we can bring out to you directly. So with that, I'm going to kick off the video.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your first look at the City of Phoenix 2016-17 City Manager's Trial Budget.
Input from our residents is very important, as your ideas can help shape what will end up being the final budget for the next fiscal year.
The final budget is important because it provides the plan for how the city will spend taxpayer money and how services that you depend on could be impacted.
I think the city manager's trial budget provides a great pathway for us to continue providing the outstanding services that Phoenix residents expect, and it gives employees the opportunity to continue to provide that great service every day.
Why is a balanced budget important? It's required by state law and city charter. In this trial budget, there is a $60 million surplus that can be used to improve essential services that will benefit the community. Examples include public safety needs, employee compensation, and restoration of some programs and services. So how does the funding work? Funding for the city budget comes from three sources: the general fund, enterprise funds, and special revenue funds. Examples of general fund city departments include police, fire, the library, parks and recreation, and streets. Enterprise fund departments include aviation, water services, solid waste services, and the convention center. Special revenue funds account for designated sources of money for specific purpose, like sales tax dollars for the hiring of police officers and firefighters, and funds for public transit.
So how did we get here? Under the leadership of the mayor and city council, we are glad to say the budget is balanced.
The mayor and city council have really set the tone and direction for our city staff and employees to be focused on innovation and efficiency.
Here's just some of the ways that happened. First, eliminating 119 vacant positions and other administrative savings actions that will result in an overall savings of just over $11 million. Second, there is a one-time carryover of $25 million from last year's surplus. Also, the city is saving by making needed adjustments to the workers' compensation fund and has sold extra police helicopters that were too expensive to maintain. Did you know that Phoenix has reduced administrative expenses and has the smallest number of employees per capita in over 40 years? And while still providing great services, the city has reduced authorized staffing levels by more than 2,700 positions. That is 16% since 2007. Also, city staff is constantly finding innovative ways to save money. Did you know that since 2010, we have saved $106 million in taxpayer funding? Some examples. The municipal court. It saved almost $600,000 by eliminating a criminal courtroom and a civil courtroom due to lower court volume. Plus, a new process with copy services. By reducing the number of printers and copiers citywide and securing more competitive rates with copy contracts, the city should save hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. Now to rising pension costs, which continue to be an important issue. Thanks to the leadership of the mayor and city council and actions taken by voters, the savings from reform efforts will reach $1.1 billion over a 23-year period. And what a difference a year makes. Last year's 5-year forecast projected a deficit of up to $58 million. But with guidance from the mayor and council and the efficient work of city staff, that deficit was eliminated without reducing services to the community.
Mayor and council also expect us to provide great service, and that's what the city employees work to do every day.
One of the biggest challenges the city faces has to do with how the city will continue to make its debt payments for voter-approved capital projects.
We're at a place where we need to make tough choices, like any of us during the recession where you may have lost a job or your wife may have lost their job and your income changed and your bill stayed the same. So the city of Phoenix is at that point now.
Several options will be discussed, including increasing Phoenix's combined property tax rate. Phoenix has had the same rate for 20 years. That means since 1995, residents have paid $1.82 per $100 of assessed value for property tax. The rate has gone unchanged while the city's population grew and important services developed, like new fire stations, parks, and libraries. The city has been using a reserved fund to help pay off that debt. This has relieved homeowners from increases in property tax rates, especially during the recession.
What other cities in the valley, after the recession, they started to, when their assessed valuation changed, the values of their properties changed, they started to float their rate up and down so that they levied the same amount of money, brought in the same amount of income. What the city of Phoenix did, we thought that we would give our taxpayers relief. So we kept the rate at $1.82.
In the meantime, the city had debt to pay, so a reserve fund was used. This relieved homeowners from increases in property tax rates, especially during the recession. But now that well of backup money is finally running dry, and the city needs to raise an additional $37 million to pay the debt service. Otherwise, Phoenix's strong credit rating could take a hit.
We are taking in less money, and now we still have the same payments. Our payment on our mortgage is essentially our debt service. That's what we have to continue making. At the same time, we have other sources or other services that we provide. Those costs have also increased, and our ability to make those payments has gotten tougher and tougher.
The budget lays out 5 ways to solve this. A detailed explanation of these options are in the trial budget summary booklet, handed out at all public meetings and online at phoenix.gov/budget. Option number 1, increase the combined property tax rate by 35 cents to $2.17. This would equal an additional $4.25 per month on an average single-family home, about 14 cents a day. Even at this rate, the average single-family homeowner will still be paying less than they did back in 2009.
We could continue to provide services, infrastructure, pay our debt at the lowest, cheapest possible cost, and maintain a very strong bond rating and provide our citizens with good services for many years to come.
Option number 2, generate $37 million in other ways by increasing a local sales tax, a food tax, or perhaps an addition to your city services bill. Option number 3, use all of the $60 million surplus to provide property tax relief for 2 years. That means no money would be available to restore employee concessions or add community services, including those cut in previous years. Now keep in mind, with this option, the city would still need to find a solution to this problem in 2 years, and this could hurt the city's strong credit rating. Option number 4, use some of the surplus money to provide tax relief for 1 more year, along with some of our reserve funds. But the issue will have to be addressed again next year. Now, with this option, the city could improve some proposed services, but not all. And this option could hurt the city's strong credit rating.
Some of these other options are short-term, which means they're only going to provide a solution for 1 year, maybe 2 years. And it really is just kicking the can down the road, and we will be back in this situation in a couple of years asking for a solution from our citizens.
Option number 5, cut $37 million from the general fund by making significant cuts that would directly affect the city's ability to serve residents and business owners. The city manager has outlined $44 million in services from which to choose. This includes cutting $14 million from the police department, $10 million from the fire department, more than $2 million in library services, and $6 million from the city's Parks and Recreation department. In a service business like the city, dollars translate into the people who provide the services, like 911 response, recreation programs, senior and youth services, and more.
Since 2010, we've been drawing down our fund balance reserve for our GO bonds, and we're at the end of that. So this is the last year that we can use that reserve to pay our debt service.
How will the city tackle this debt service situation for the long term? The plan is to refund and restructure bonds as long as rates remain where they are now. Until then, one of the mentioned 5 options must happen in order to pay the city's debt service for the facilities we've built. This is critical in order to keep the city's strong credit rating, which lets the city borrow money at a low interest rate to fund projects that are important to you. A look at these 5 options are on page 5 of your trial budget summary booklet.
Here's a look at the new services proposed in the trial budget. Many residents feel that protecting the public should be the city's top priority. The mayor and council agree it's critically important to keep everyone safe. That's why public safety and criminal justice amounts to 72% of the general fund in this trial budget. The new budget adds $2.4 million for the first year of a 3-year, $11 million plan for Phoenix police officers to start using body cameras.
Well, body cameras mean a lot of things. Safety is one of them, transparency is one of them, trust is another thing. For our residents, it allows them to have greater confidence in their police department.
The budget would also allow the department to hire a director of employee assistance and wellness.
Our employees are our most valuable asset. We need to make sure we take care of our employees. By hiring this position, it allows us to do that.
Now to the fire department. The budget would spend $2.8 million in one-time costs to replace the obsolete Emergency Transportation Billing System, known as EPCR.
We are the last large city in the state of Arizona to move forward with EPCR.
Electronic records will let our paramedics spend more time on patient care and less time on paperwork, and make payments from insurance carriers more efficient.
The latest technology for us to do our jobs more efficiently, protect the information of the community, bill efficiently so the taxpayers are getting revenue back into the pockets in order to provide services to the city of Phoenix.
The budget also calls for spending $1 million to begin rebuilding the road to North Mountain, along with fixing the radio tower to make it meet industry standards. The radio tower is critical to the city's public safety radio system. Now, to dedicated public safety special revenue funds. Because these funds will be balanced next year, the budget includes the hiring of 130 police officers in 2016-2017.
Other than 2015, we hadn't hired any police officers for almost 6 years.
The council also approved a plan to hire 36 firefighters next fiscal year.
We have been fortunate over the last couple of years to be able to hire minimal amounts of firefighters. This will allow us to fill all of our vacancies.
Now, let's look at dedicated Phoenix Parks and Preserves initiative funds. Money would be used to maintain new dog parks, recreation centers, and playing fields. From the Development Services Fund, which is paid for by building permit and inspection fees, is this proposal. The city is seeing a huge spike in construction, which is great news. To keep up with demand, the budget calls for adding 8 new positions to meet the needs of all the growth. Out of the Solid Waste Special Enterprise Funds, the trial budget calls for adding 15 positions and equipment needed to support curbside green organics, diversion, and illegal dumping programs. This will ensure that Phoenix continues to be a national leader in keeping waste out of city landfills. The budget calls for a few additions that directly will help the members of our community. They include new funding to support the city's continued effort to get veterans off the streets and back on their feet.
So the proposed funding will support peer navigators who help veterans living on the street make all the connections they need to make to get into housing and stay housed.
And money to add staff and supplies for after-school programs for disengaged youth.
This funding would really allow us to increase our programming by offering STEM programs, physical activities, as well as interaction between the youth and adults in many of our city parks.
Looking ahead, one of the biggest challenges to the general fund continues to be the cost of employee pensions. The trial budget reflects an increase of $15 million in civilian employee pension costs. But since the mayor and city council took action on pension reform and the voters made their voices heard, these short-term increases will slow over time with a savings of more than $1 billion over the next 2 decades. Now to the police and fire pensions, which will go up $21 million. This is the result of a state Supreme Court decision. Increases in future years are partly because of other pending court challenges and system funding issues. Also, proposed reforms could help reduce how much the city will pay in the future. Then there's employee compensation. For 6 years, city employees have been part of the shared solution of our budget issues, agreeing to almost 6% in cuts to compensation. 4.2% of that is still in effect. The trial budget proposes to responsibly restore some of it, 2.6%, or $44 million, over the next 2 years. This is an investment in our most valuable resource, the workers. As a service business, the city depends on good workers to provide outstanding services. Keep in mind, the budget hasn't been adopted just yet. Your input is important, and the City of Phoenix wants to hear from you on what the upcoming budget should look like.
The budget is really for the people of Phoenix, and so for it to be the best budget possible, it needs to reflect what people have to tell us, and that's why we're out to listen to the residents in the trial budget.
In summary, the trial budget has several options, including solving the debt service issue by raising the combined property tax by 35 cents to $2.17. This would allow the city to use surplus money to add critical services to our police, fire, and other city departments. It would also allow the city to restore some concessions made by city workers 6 years ago.
15 public hearings will take place this month across all council districts, and you are encouraged to attend. Make sure you pick up a budget pamphlet outlining all the proposals and options at any of the public meetings or online at phoenix.gov/budget. You can also send your comments or questions to budget.research@phoenix.gov, or to reach us by phone, call 602-262-4800. You can also comment on social media by using #PhoenixBudget. Thank you for attending this budget hearing and being part of a very important process. The City of Phoenix is committed to its mission of improving the quality of life in Phoenix through the efficient delivery of outstanding public services.
All right, so that is the video. So we're about to take comments from everybody. As a reminder, when I call your name, if you could just come up to the microphone up front here, and if you need us to bring the microphone out to you, just raise your hand, and we'll be happy to do that. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and so I'll let you know when you've hit the 3-minute time limit, and that way we can make sure there's enough time for everybody to speak, and everybody can get back home to their families. I do want to also introduce Jeff Barton. He's our Budget and Research Director, and he's up here and can help answer any questions about the budget as well. So with that, I will start with our first speaker, Kimberly Brophy. And after Kimberly will be Jason Newman.
Great, I get to go first. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kimberly Brophy. I'm an Ahwatukee resident for over 20 years, and I have 9 years service as a fire emergency dispatcher for Phoenix Regional Dispatch Center. Although I'm a City of Phoenix fire employee, we answer 911 lines for nearly every city in the valley, as far away as Maricopa and Gila Bend. I became a 911 dispatcher because when I was 12 years old, my mother took a near-fatal overdose. It was a scarring childhood event for me. I found that helping other people through similar situations has been a way to turn that trauma into something positive. I certainly didn't become a 911 dispatcher to get rich. No one does. I enjoy what I do, who I work with and for very much. That doesn't mean it's easy. We're a 24-hour call center, and all of us have had to endure night shifts with sedentary long hours, stress, missed time with our families. We get that. That's what we signed up for. What the job description doesn't mention is the extreme highs you feel when your work helps save a life, or the gut-wrenching lows you feel when you're doing everything you can and it just isn't enough. On top of my job stress, I also worry about the financial security because my salary barely meets my needs. I'm a single mother of 3 daughters. I budget every dollar I earn. As a dispatcher, the official way of determining if I'm good at my job is a yearly review that may lead to a conservative merit raise if you meet the standards. And when you do meet the standards, you look forward to that pay increase, more money, less stress. Last year, I got an annual merit raise, and then my pay took a small percentage just a couple of months later. All that work and you're just treading water. Then there are 56 furlough hours a year. That's about a week and a half where I can't work and I don't get paid. Pay cuts and mandatory furlough days have been going on for 6 years. Enough's enough. Last year, our city manager sent an email claiming that the city budget was finally balanced. This frustrates me, insults me, and makes me feel undervalued as a city employee, and frankly, as a citizen of Phoenix. In an emergency, the work that my coworkers and I do is the top priority. It's upsetting to see that the city sees this work as just another budget item. As far as I know, my center is the only center in the nation that has endured these kinds of concessions for this long. Phoenix was once named the best-run city in the world. Now that same city is balancing their budget on the backs of hardworking, sacrificing, underappreciated employees like myself. There are smaller comm centers with less of a workload in the valley that are hiring this very minute for better starting pay than what Phoenix offers. So why not just go for it? Because dispatching in every center is seniority driven, and where more money alone isn't worth the price of starting over. That's how a single mother of 3 winds up on the night shift again, working holidays, missing birthdays. You get the picture.
Ms. Brophy, at the 3 minutes, if you can wrap up your comments.
2 more paragraphs. Besides, as I said, I love what I do. I want to blossom and thrive where I've already planted myself. But the city needs to help us grow. Please end the furloughs, restore the wages for myself and my coworkers, find and secure other revenue and budget savings without continually taking money and security from the people who do such important work for you and your community. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Brophy. Jason Newman is next, and then after Jason will be Ms. Rogers.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Newman. I'm a third-generation Phoenician and very proud to call Phoenix my home. I am also honored to serve this city as a firefighter with the Phoenix Fire Department. Police officers and firefighters can be many things to many people. What we truly are is your neighbors, fellow church members, friends, mothers, and fathers. We are also honored and humbled to serve a city that we love, even when that service comes at our own expense. For many years, our department has lived by the motto, "Our family helping yours." It is so ingrained in our culture that it was proudly displayed on our apparatus for the whole world to see for many years. While we are no longer allowed to display this slogan, it still lives on within our membership. Traditionally, this has meant that in times of strife or in a person's darkest hour, we are there for you. Regardless of the emergency, your police officers and firefighters are there to help to the best of our ability in an attempt to bring light into the dark. In 2010, our organization's mantra of "Our family helping yours" took on a whole new meaning. Our city was in the midst of an economic crisis. To say it was our city's darkest hour is by no means a stretch of the imagination. I am proud to say that the police and fire departments responded to this emergency in the same manner that we respond to a 911 call. We modified our contracts and voluntarily agreed to take a 6% cut to our total compensation. This was done with the promise by city leadership that the cuts were temporary and that our compensation would be restored. We agreed to earn less so that the residents of Phoenix would not have to forego services or pay more. The actions taken by police officers and firefighters have saved the city nearly $500 million since 2010. Additionally, the city has not only restored, but added to the rainy day fund so that it may be better suited to withstand another downturn should it occur. General fund revenue for fiscal year 2016-2017 has grown over 16% since 2011 and reached an all-time high of $1.1 billion. That's higher than in the peak of the residential boom here in 2009. The cost of restoring the remaining 4.2% compensation to first responders is a minor fraction of that amount. When you look at that number in relation to the $500 million savings that was generated through the salary, staffing, and budget reductions, it quickly becomes clear that now is the time for city leadership to make right by their word to employees who have given so much and worked so hard to right the ship. We appreciate the fact that the city has taken steps in this proposed budget to restore a portion of the employees' compensation. Regrettably, the proposed options do not offer to fully restore employee compensation despite the city clearly having the financial means to do so. We are not asking for a raise. We are simply asking for the city to do the right thing and reinstate our compensation with the same sense of urgency that we took when implementing our cuts. A wise man in our organization once made the observation that there was a time when we treated our trucks better than we treated our people. When we shifted our organizational paradigm and put a greater emphasis towards our membership, our organization flourished and became a department that is widely regarded as one of the best in the nation. The city of Phoenix has long enjoyed the reputation of being one of the best-run cities in the world. At the heart of this reputation lie the city's employees, who are honored to serve not only the citizens of Phoenix, but anyone who happens to be passing through. It is the employee who has sacrificed and adapted to provide the same level of service with fewer resources that help this city weather the storm. We implore you, do not make the mistakes of a bygone era and care more about your trucks than you do your people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Next speaker is Greta Rogers. And then after Ms. Rogers will be Dory Levy.
I'm humbled to be speaking after these two exemplary employees for the city of Phoenix. And I am ashamed as a citizen that your compensation has not yet been fully restored. It's sinful, it's inexcusable, it's wrong. And it's why the morale in the city of Phoenix among the employees today is at the lowest level I have ever known it to be in over 20 years of being active as a citizen, whether they like it or not, with the city of Phoenix. It cannot stand. It's immoral, it's unethical, it's wrong. They're proposing a property tax increase from $1.82 per $100 of valuation to $2.17 of $100 of valuation. That's a 35-cent increase per 100. We have the lowest city property tax in the nation of any community of 500,000 or above. New York being the highest, between 7 and 8 million. And at $2.17 will still be the lowest. For the 6th largest city in the country, that is disgusting and shameful. I want it passed. It should be at least $1. But I want this passed by plurality of every person in this city who is registered to vote in the May 17 election or whatever the date is. I discussed at a private meeting with Ed Zerker, the city manager, in early January, right after the new year, 3 essentials that must be included in this budget, and I said to Ed, they're non-negotiable, so don't give me any BS. 1, all employee wages to be restored to full parity from the forgiven concessions given a little in '09 and the full amount in '10. Employee negotiations are negotiated for a 2-year period. 6% is the total that they gave up. And they also, during this period of time, added an increase by agreement to their benefit cost. So it's more than 6%. I want this 4.2 that remains restored this coming fiscal year. No ifs, ands, or buts, or questions. It's essential. And I want PD and FD restored to full complement within 2 years. That's by the end of 17. PD needs about 320 more, and FD needs about 200. That must be done. And the third is the Street Transportation Department must be given a sufficient budget to begin to plan for redesign, repair, and restoration of the crumbling streets in this city. It doesn't happen out here. We're too young. I sold my first house out here in 1974 at the corner of Kiva and the Loop. This town is now just barely 44 years old. Our streets are fine. But from 32nd to 59th West, 32nd East, 59 West, northern to Baseline, they are a crumbling, disintegrating mess. I drove to Maryvale to this meeting 2 or 3 days ago, and if I hadn't been in a full-size car, I would have been swallowed into 2 potholes west of 27th Avenue on McDowell. The city would have cheered, but I would have been damn mad. I want the essentials restored, and if departments have to go without the non-essentials, like body cameras for $11 million, so be it. They can get in line and take their turn for their options. Vote for the property tax, support your employees, support your city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Dory Levy. And then after Ms. Levy is Marcus Steele.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dory Levy. I'm a 911 operator and dispatcher for the Phoenix Police Department. Although my coworkers and I are not officers, our job is equally as important because we're the first point of contact for all calls to 911 and the Phoenix Police Department non-emergency number. We generate the calls for service for police on the phone calls we take and are the lifeline for the police officers in our city. Any medical or fire calls are transferred over to our fire department 911 dispatch center. Police and fire 911 dispatchers, along with all other city employees, have had pay cuts and furlough for the past 6 years. This amounts to $2,000 to $3,000 a year per employee for the city to balance their budget. Morale is low, and we have lost employees as a result of the concessions we have been forced to take. We are now expected to take on a heavier workload due to being understaffed. This has also been a problem in all other city departments as well. If nothing is done to restore our pay to what it was 6 years ago, we will lose even more employees citywide. I hope that the City Council and the residents will be in support of the property tax increase that will preserve the services our citizens deserve and restore concessions so that we may retain our valuable city employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levy. Marcus Steele. Is Marcus Steele still here? Okay. Actually, have you noted not to speak? So sorry about that. I missed that. Just say I would like city leadership to keep its promise and restore all wages. So thank you. So Sean, I'm not sure I'm going to read this right. Morass. Okay. All right.
Thanks for that, Dad. So I've been a resident here in Ahwatukee for, this microphone's almost the perfect height. I've been a resident here in Ahwatukee for about 21 years now, since I was 15. My father moved me out here. I'm a City of Phoenix employee. I work for the fire department. I've been so for about 11 years. I'm a firefighter paramedic. And I can remember back in 2010, the city of Phoenix was facing one of its worst financial crises ever in our history. That very same year, your police officers and firefighters voluntarily broke our own contracts so that we could take pay cuts so the citizens of Phoenix wouldn't feel that burden. We did so with the promise that the city would get us back for the next contract year. That contract year came, the city came to us and said, we still don't have the money to pay you guys back. Actually, we're gonna ask you to take deeper pay cuts. And we did so. We did so happily because it was the right thing to do. Again, the city came to us and said, we'll get you back next time. Fast forward 6 years later, with broken promises and a city leadership telling us that they don't have to pay us the money that they owe us. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that's untruthful. The city now has a general fund surplus of $60 million. And for those of you that don't know, the general fund is what pays our salaries, police officers and firefighters. They can use that money for whatever they want. That is not budgeted for anything. The city of Phoenix has a revenue stream greater than it's ever had in the history right now. They have tripled their capital spending, and even with this surplus, management still refuses to pay its employees the restoration that it owes us. Every other city in the valley has had the same financial downturn that the city of Phoenix has had. Yet they have found the money to completely restore their employee concessions. And most cities on top of that have actually gave their employees raises. I can tell you, watching that video that you guys made with the $60,000 budget, well, I didn't mention the actual dollar amount that we sacrificed. When I say me, I mean the police officers and firefighters. Our sacrifices saved the city $500 million since 2010. That $500 million, we saved the city $500 million. Compared to what we sacrificed, all we're asking back is a sliver. And it can be argued that police officers and firefighters have earned our pay cuts back 10 times fold. So what is the city planning on doing with its surplus money that it has? Well, it plans on spending $118 million on a park restoration. And I don't know how many of you guys know this, but the city of Phoenix owns the Sheraton downtown. And since we bought that Sheraton, it has lost, every year it's lost money. Since its inception, it's lost millions of dollars, yet the city refuses to give it up. It'll allow that thing to keep losing money, but it refuses to pay back its employees. It's also talking about building a new sports complex downtown. And I think all of you know about what those sports complexes run. They're not cheap. I can tell you it's a lot more than we're asking for back. Yet, our city management, our city leadership still refuses to pay what we lent them to keep our city from sinking. So they can make these really cool videos up there and talk about how great they are for saving the city. When in reality, what really saved the city was position cuts, pay cuts, furloughs, and employee efficiency. Saved the city $500 million. What we're asking back is roughly $40 million over the next 2 years. 6 years ago, when these budget cuts began, the city council, city manager told us, if you take less, if you do more with less, when our city budget returns to full strength, we'll restore your concessions. Today, the city has never had more money to spend than it ever has in its history. All we're asking for is a little sliver of that money back. We're asking you to please restore the concessions that we gave to you. Keep the promise that you made to us. So all I'm asking you, please do not vote for any city budget that does not include full employee restoration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morales.
If I could, that was really well done, Sean. And you can call me Sal. You don't have to call me Mr. But on the couple quick things right off the bat. One, this is the highest revenue that the city of Phoenix has ever had in its history. Two, the losses from the Sheraton are about 50 to 55 million in total. And then three, and I'm not going to get into a long discussion over it, but there are a few of us that are on the council that believe that we ought to be focusing on strategic functions. Fire would be one, police would be one, dispatchers would be one as well. Some of us see that as strategic functions. Aha, thank you. That's why you're a firefighter. I'm sitting up here. You know, no, you're, oh, well, but, so we do, there are some of us that would like to see a focus on those strategic functions, and it's not that complicated to be able to look at what the overall functions of the city of Phoenix are. We shouldn't be getting into those things that we are not good at. Owning a hotel is not something that I believe should be a city function. There are certain things that we should not be in. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to get into a long discussion, but some of us have been pushing pretty hard to try to get a strategic plan for the city of Phoenix. We're a $3.5 billion operation with no true strategic plan of what is and what isn't an important function of government.
Our next speaker is Brian Axelrod, and not to speak, okay. So Neil Haddad. Neil here? Well, while Mr. Haddad comes up, I do have a card from Charles Montagna who says, city leaders step up and restore all wages for public safety. This is not a tax increase. And then after Mr. Haddad will be Sandy Novelli.
Thank you. Good to see everybody here tonight, and I agree with all of the things that were said before. I'm Neil Haddad, and a resident of District 6. And so we know that in 2010, the city faced an unprecedented budget crisis, and we all have heard about police officers and firefighters voluntarily agreeing to give up contract money. And so, so when public safety employees, police and fire, agreed to the cuts so that the public would not have to pay more. And then a small amount of the cuts, 1.8%, as we know, has been restored, but it's time to restore the rest. And so, again, I agree with so much of what was said here earlier, but, you know, some facts. We talk about saving $500,000 since 2010 as a result of those cuts. And, you know, I just find it interesting that the video that we saw talks about the significant cuts that are being made to pension costs. Over the next 20 years, it's going to amount to $1 billion. We should also recognize the fact that in the past 6 years, $500 million has been saved. So that's pretty significant. And maybe it should be part of that video to let people know. You know, there was mention about the increases in the general fund up to $1.1 billion, so 16% more, but there's also more money from our state shared revenues. So an increase in sales taxes of 32%. An increase, I mean, many of you know this, income taxes from the state, 53% increase. Vehicle license taxes up 32%. So all significant dollars. What I have not heard yet is what's on the ballot in May and how public safety has led the fight to change their pension formula statewide so that governments across the state are going to start paying less on the cost of living adjustment, just so there isn't a crisis throughout the state. And as I understand it, that is going to bend the curve pretty quickly. 3 years, 4 years, something like that. So that's going to take effect really quickly. And from my standpoint as a citizen, I think that public safety, police and fire deserve a lot of credit for once again stepping up and voluntarily saying they're willing to make it better so it's not a nightmare, a financial nightmare or a crisis for governments across the state. So I think that's a big deal, and I think you need to promote that more. That's really huge. And as far as we know, there's no organized opposition to that proposition. So to me, that's a big deal. You know, the whole issue of where we are in sworn personnel right now, I show that since '09, we're down 561 police officers and down 160 firefighters. I understand that we're hiring about 130 new police officers this year, but how close are we going to be keeping up to attrition on that? As I understand it, the past couple of years, it's been about 120 police officers that have been lost due to attrition. So 130 is not significant. And even the number that we're hiring, I'm not sure that the community wants to count on police officers until they've had 2 years on the job. So I understand you're looking at a year of training, but really 2 years on the job. So really it's going to take time to get there. So,
Mr. Haddad, well past the 3 minutes, if you can wrap up your comment.
I'd love to. So, you know, really public safety personnel has helped us get through the hard times over the past 6 years. There's no doubt about that. And so the city is on strong financial footing now, and they got there with significant help from employees. So this year, restore the 4.2% for public safety personnel and provide an additional 1% for the contributions that they've made over the past 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haddad. Sandy Novelli.
Thank you. I wasn't planning on speaking, so I probably won't take 2 or 3 minutes, but it's, you have to excuse me. I'm retired from Phoenix Fire Department. My name's Sandy Novelli. Phoenix Fire retired 3 months ago after 32 years, and very proud of being on the Phoenix Fire Department. But I'm really concerned about things that are going on now. And excuse me for jumping back and forth, but as I signed my retirement papers, the lady who informed me at downtown the city informed me, unfortunately, she had to tell me that I was going to be paying about $2,000 a month for my wife and I for health insurance. Very sweet lady, but I felt sorry when she had to tell me that. But she also said that they couldn't keep up with employees. Employees were leaving like crazy, which is, I mean, and that's the thing that really concerned me, that not only police and fire, but I mean, this is happening throughout the city. So that bothered me. And then just, I got some news on the internet that one of the proposals to save money is to take the medic off of some of the ambulances here in the city. That's insane. The only thing that could happen there, this is a life issue here. What's going to happen then, if you take a medic off to save $5 an hour or whatever it's going to save, and you're going to cut the time that the ambulances are in service, you're going to take trucks out of service. These are things that the fire department, that the citizens of Ahwatukee and other parts of Phoenix have to know. You're going to shut down ambulances, and you're going to take these trucks out of service for longer. You're going to save $5 an hour taking a medic off a truck, yet you're going to have the truck have to go to the hospital. The whole crew's going to have to go to the hospital and be totally out of service. So there's going to be bigger areas of Ahwatukee and parts of Phoenix that aren't going to have any service in their immediate area, so they're going to have to wait even longer. That's a scary part right there. But anyway, I came here from the Midwest. I was on the department 5 years there. I want to be on Phoenix Fire Department. Well, now that the guys that I worked with there, they're all retiring, and quite honestly, their pensions are better than ours. So anyway, it's all about quality. Things could get done. Things could get done with one fire station here in Ahwatukee. You know, I mean, things will get done. Houses will burn, more people will die, but things can get done. That's how it used to be here. Because I was one of the first crews that worked here in Ahwatukee 32 years ago. The rural metro would have one guy on a truck until we got here. But anyway, I'm proud to say that my son is on the job here. He's got 11 years on the job. And I also have two nephews that I love dearly. They're not brainiacs or anything, but I just found out recently that one is an accountant for Pepsi-Cola and one is a marketing salesperson. They make 4 and 5 times of what my son is making. 4 and 5 times. I had no idea that they were making that much money. So now I'm thinking, wow, I really was proud of my son, and I still am proud of him, but now I feel bad that maybe I should have pushed him to be more like his cousins. And they don't sweat. They've never been shot. You know, they've never been in a bloody mess. They work in air conditioning. You know, so. But what's going to happen in generations? It might not happen in the next couple of years, but my fear is that in 1 or 2 generations, if you take away all the benefits, in my career, if I could have taken my pension with me, there was 3 times that I would have left. After you get blood on you, you get coughed at, you're sitting in the back of an ambulance getting spit on, you get urine, you get feces all over you. It's a pretty common occurrence. After a while, if I could have taken my pension, if there was no pension, I probably would have gone. And that's what's going to happen in the future. You're not going to be able to keep men and women on the job to do this. But anyway, lastly, an interesting thing being here in Ahwatukee, this is a gigantic area here. They should have, and this is something that fire knows, and police, I'm sure, agree, there should be at least another 2 fire stations here in Ahwatukee and at least 2 more ambulances here. What you should be doing is try to get more stations, more firefighters here, definitely more ambulances here, because the hospitals are so far away, or get a hospital closer. You got to do, you really have to do something. But anyway, sorry to bore you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Novelli. Next speaker is Carolyn Addy. While she comes up, I have a comment from Neil Ray's, wish not to speak, but marked pay restoration for city employees, and from Scott Ofred, who also wished not to speak, but mentioned $60 million surplus after tax increase, must restore cuts to employees and buy body cameras. And EPCR, the new fire system, patient care system, must not balance budget on backs of employees. Ms. Addy?
I'm going to change the headline a little bit. I'm not from the fire department and I'm not from the police department, but I am an advocate for the library and the library employees, that their hours of service have been cut, and what that means is the hours of service to the community have been cut. Do you know the Ironwood Library is closed on Friday? Did you know that? Yeah. That those hours of service have been cut long ago, not restored. And that's other city employees who have taken a hit. But it's also the community, because the library does a whole lot more than check out books. They provide after-school services for children. They encourage reading and literacy. They encourage entrepreneurship, and also serve as a community center in many cases, where they're kids cafe, where they work with Salvation Army so kids don't go hungry. They get their snacks and meals there. They also help students with online high school, as well as College Depot, helping students and their parents find ways to get students into college. What that means in the long term, through increased literacy and the other services, is that we have a healthier, more financially stable community to live in, which indeed helps all of us in the community. So I'm here to advocate for the library and hope that indeed that we can keep our employees very happy.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Teefee. While he comes up, I do have a card from F.D. Smith, wish not to speak, but is in support of the city restoring all the concessions of police and fire that were taken 6 years ago. Mr. Teefee?
Good evening. My name is, very short, this guy. My name is John Teefee. I'm a recently retired captain with the Phoenix Fire Department. I worked for y'all for 30 years. I believe the speakers before me have painted a pretty good picture about what we gave up and why. I think what's important to realize, though, is that we did this out of a sense of community, because that's how this city used to run. Recently, short-sighted politicians have tried to paint it as it's city workers versus the taxpayers. It's city workers against you. We're the ones hurting you. That's not true, okay? We gave up our wages because we knew that the city needed it. And that helped. That helped, as you've heard, $500 million, okay? All we're asking now is that it's been 6 years, and that's long enough. We shouldn't have in our video how proud we are that we have 2,700 fewer workers. We should be ashamed that we have less cops and less firefighters out there doing the job. And really, and less library workers, and less streets workers, and less parks people, and we've made them the enemy, less dispatchers, okay? So when you look at this, I think a couple things to keep in mind. All we're asking for is fair compensation for what we do. And since this pay cut went into effect, we've lost 3 police officers, we've lost 1 firefighter, we put hundreds in the hospital from shootings and stabbings and structural collapse and burns. And I believe we have done our part to be trusted Phoenix employees and to at least get back to where we are, or sorry, to where we were 6 years ago. A Phoenix firefighter makes a new Phoenix firefighter makes $15 an hour. I don't hear a lot about that, do you? So thank you for your support. I know I strongly, and my neighborhood groups strongly support this property tax. And I think it's also important too is that if there's anyone out there who thinks that they're gonna turn police against fire or fire against police, We work together, we bleed together, and we stand together, and we stand with all of you people. So thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Teefee. Next speaker, Matt Grush. Matt Grush, okay. As he comes up, I do have a card from Jennifer Lippman, who marked to not speak, but mentioned that 4.2 concessions should be restored for fire after 6 years of cuts. Mr. Grush.
Hello, I've lived in Ahwatukee in the area. I've been everyone's neighbor for about 12 years. I've worked for Phoenix Fire for coming up on 10 years, and for the last couple months now, it's nice. I'm able to also work at the station down the street by the YMCA, so it's nice to be able to protect my friends and neighbors. Wanted to just put a few facts out there because I'm asked a lot of questions. I came from the police department in a neighboring city. I willingly and happily chose to take approximately a $15,000 a year pay cut to be a Phoenix firefighter, and that's also with going from 40 hours a week to approximately 60 hours a week. Right now, other cities are getting pay raises, benefits. We're fighting to get back the temporary pay cuts that we voluntarily and willingly gave to the city. And we all did that, again, happily, but with the agreement that it was temporary. And now we're in the position to try to fight to get that back just to be made whole. Let's see. I get questions from friends and neighbors. They say they read articles, some saying that we take pay cuts, others saying that we're getting raises and bonuses. Just to set that straight and how it pertains to me, when you hear about the merit raises and the steps, firefighters and police officers start out at partial pay. So when I started at a neighboring city, I looked at the pay and thought it sounded pretty good, but then you get hired and find out that you start at about 60% of that, and it takes up to 10 years until you reach full salary. So everyone would be more than happy to start out at full salary, but it doesn't cost the city money to have those steps. It saves them a lot of money. And then there's the issue of longevity. So personally, I have full pay, so I don't get any pay steps where I'm at now. So, no increases, no raises. Just last year alone, I had about $1,000 in pay cuts. So the issue of longevity, for me, that's about $9 a week. So it's a few hundred a year, but far less than the pay cuts just from last year alone. So, we often have a lot of confusion or questions about that. So just in Phoenix, we're still doing a great job. Ahwatukee's a great place to live, but right now we're asking just to be made whole. The money that we donated and voluntarily gave up, we're asking for that back and asking for the city to keep their word. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grush. Next speaker is Ken Crane. And while Mr. Crane comes up to the front, I have a card from Tom Henry, who wished not to speak, but says we should restore the fire department pay cuts. And after Mr. Crane will be Frank Pacholi. Mr. Crane.
Thanks. Good evening. I've spoken at a few of these meetings, so I'm starting to feel like a broken record player. And a lot of people have already touched on the same points, a couple of issues, so I'll try to be brief. But a couple of points I want to talk about is we're in favor of, first of all, I'm Ken Crane. I'm a veteran Phoenix police officer, almost coming up on 27 years. I serve as the president of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. We represent about over 2,000 rank and file cops and detectives. But we're in favor of increasing the property tax to a floating tax. We shouldn't have to keep coming to these hearings all the time urging for more increases. You set it at a floating tax, it self-regulates, it takes care of itself. It can go up or float down a little bit. For PD, I want to talk briefly on the issue of body cams. I've had people ask me as a union president, what's your position? And I've told people we're not really opposed to them. It's a good tool. I just don't know if we need to rush headlong down the path to try to implement the whole program in 3 years. It's very expensive. I think we could spread that out over 5 to 7 years and be a little more practical, a little more cost effective. Body cams are a fact of life nationally. We're going to eventually have them, and eventually the whole department will be outfitted. So we understand that. Everybody's talked about shared sacrifice, taking cuts, stepping up to the plate. We've all done that. We've been good partners in public safety. We've done it willingly. We're not greedy people. We understand that partnership with the community is important, and everything's important. By that I mean all the jobs that we have, not just police and fire. So we get that. Another point, somebody mentioned the cost of the savings to the city of nearly $500 million since 2010. On the PD side, I want to just mention that in 2009, we had about 3,332 sworn officers, and that's down to 2,771, a reduction of about 560. With all the retirements we've had, that's dropped even down to close to 700 bodies. So to put that in perspective, just eliminate the entire Glendale and Avondale PD, and that's the loss that we've suffered in Phoenix, okay, for your police officers on the street. That's impacted response times. When I came on the department, response to an emergency call is supposed to be 3 minutes or less. Sometimes now we're up 6-7 minutes on that. It's unacceptable, it's unsafe, it's not fair to the citizens that we serve. Staffing problems, you've heard a lot about that. Sometimes we've got squads running out of the stations at 50% levels. That's unacceptable too. It's not safe for our officers that patrol, and it's not fair to the citizens because they're not getting the service they need. So, a couple other points and I'll wrap up here. I was at a meeting the other night where they were talking about costs of police officers and firefighters, and somebody mentioned, well, it's $140,000 for a firefighter, $150,000 for a cop. If you hear those numbers, people like to throw numbers around in a cavalier manner. Please understand that's the per unit cost. That's all the infrastructure that goes with hiring and putting a cop or firefighter in the street. That's the cost of fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, radios, gun belts, guns, training, all that stuff. Healthcare benefits. It's the total compensation cost package to put us out there. But there's no, I'm telling you, there's no cop or firefighter that's taking home $140,000, $150K in a paycheck. I've been on 27 years, not even close. One other thing that one citizen touched on I'd like to emphasize, and that is pensions. Pension costs, like the video said, they are rising. It's critical in cities and towns across Arizona. But police officers and firefighters led the charge at the state legislature on pension reform. And it didn't make us real popular in some quarters around the state. But we knew it had to be done. It was a tough pill to swallow, but we led the charge on that. And the reforms that are going to be enacted, along with the prop going on the ballot in May, if it passes, it's estimated by the actuaries that it'll save $1.5 billion, that's billion with a B, over 20 years. That's huge in reducing those pension costs to cities and towns, but we led the charge on that. The last thing I want to say is I would like to offer a word of thanks to Councilman DeCiccio and Councilman Nowakowski, who are the first ones to come out and support the full restoration of concessions for public safety personnel. They're leading the charge on that. Hopefully the other city council folks and the mayor will get the message and do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crane.
If I could just give you some numbers as well, if you don't mind. If you look, I was just doing some numbers while I was up here as well. And not that I'm in total agreement with everything when it comes to what the numbers should go for, but I'd at least give you, most of the employees that are here, give you an idea of what the total amount is. When you're looking at the $60 million number, 11 million of that is reoccurring dollars, so that we get the 11 million. The 49 million of that 60 million is a one-time expense. And then if you were to look at full restoration of employees, because that's what everyone's talking about today, it's about $44 million. And so creative math, not going into a deficit, not doing what they do in Washington, D.C., there's actually functional ways for you to be able to get to at least a part of that. Not that I'm going to support it. I'm just telling you that right off the bat. Okay, at least I'm giving you, Frank knows, I'm very direct. I may not support it, but at least I'll give you an idea of how to be able to get to those numbers. There are ways of getting to those numbers, even though I may not be completely supportive of it completely, because I don't believe that all functions in government are the same. I just don't. I think that there are functions in government that are certain levels of priority and that others that aren't. And that doesn't mean it diminishes what the value of what people's work is. I just don't believe that the City of Phoenix ought to be the entity that does that work. That's called contracting out and privatization, which I know I'll probably get some boos out of that, out of this room. But I do support it because what it does is it moves certain functions of government that are non-strategic functions outside of the City of Phoenix. It doesn't have to be done today. No one has to lose their job. It can be done through attrition, that it's done over time, but then you start focusing on those larger dollars. So going to the police and fire issue, if you were to look at just that, and dispatchers, I believe, are strategic functions of government, but not all, I don't believe that all of them are, but I believe dispatchers are, and believe fire and police are. There are functional ways to be able to get to those numbers quite easily with the budget that they have today, just because of the amount of revenues that are in there, without a property tax increase. Okay, I'm not going to support a property tax increase because I think that there's other paths up there that are more realistic, that could work, and that also protect the taxpayer. But I just wanted to put that on the table.
Thank you. Next speaker is Frank Paccioli, and while he comes up, I'll read the card from Heather Powell, who wished not to speak but commented that my family risks their lives to protect and save whoever's in need at any time of the day and night. I ask that you keep your commitment to them as they have stayed committed to their jobs, the citizens, and the City of Phoenix, and restore their compensation 100%. It's time to do what's right. Mr. Paccioli?
You're right, Shell. You're anything if not direct, so I'll give you that. My name is Frank Paccioli. I'm a 911 fire dispatcher, civilian, the first of the first responders, and I'm president of AFSCME Local 2960. So we represent civilians, 911 dispatchers, crime lab technicians, armed detention officers, fire marshals. We are not public safety, right? We are civilians. So when you talk about those numbers, 911 works for fire, but we are civilians. And we have given up the same amount of money as our sworn brothers and sisters. And staffing is still an issue in the 911 centers as well. I assure you, on a daily basis, we get people who are placed on hold when they call 911. And we dispatch for every city but Mesa and Gilbert in the county. So I pray that your family is not the one that has to here continue to hold until the next available 911 operator. This has been a problem for a decade now. If it hasn't happened to you in your lifetime, I assure you it will. So when we talk about staffing in police and fire, please don't forget the 911 police and fire dispatchers. I'm also here to talk about an end to concessions. Monday will be my 30th furlough day. 30 furlough days and 6 years of concessions. As my pay indicates, and contrary to some people's assertion, I have not been given an increase every year. And by the way, I made 25 copies of my paycheck for the last 3 years, and I'm going to place it over there, and you can see my paycheck for 2012, 13, 14, and 15. You can see my hourly wage. I did X out my social security number because I'm not absolutely crazy, but my name, my department, everything else is there. And so there's the pay decrease, and there's also $1,500 a year in furloughs. So please take a copy next time you hear I'm getting a pay increase. It's not a pay increase if you give me $10 and take $12 back. That does not equal a pay. Every year, I've been earning less and less money. The budget's been balanced on the back of the employees, civilian and sworn, year after year. And now there is a $50 million surplus, and they want to continue to balance the budget on the backs of the employees. Every year, the budget is made with concessions added in already, meaning we know you're going to give this back, and so we're just going to assume it. I am proud to work for the city. I am proud to be a dispatcher. I am proud to be a union president. But we deserve a decent pay, and I cannot continue to work year after year for less and less money. All the other cities, all the cities around us, Mesa, Tempe, Chandler, Peoria, have stopped concessions some years ago. So I ask you to look at the facts. I ask you to look at my paycheck. I ask you to look if you can handle having your child call 911 and be on hold. And remember, that's because you didn't want to pay for an increase in property tax. If you can answer yes to that and say, I don't want to pay that extra $1, and I'll take that chance of not having someone answer the phone, then so be it. If you think I can continue to work year after year for less money and you think I deserve that, then don't pass the property tax. It's really that simple. I ask you to do the right thing. We've sacrificed for the city for 6 years. I ask you to stop the concessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paccioli. Our next speaker is Mark Robert Gordon. And then after Mr. Gordon is going to be Ashley Mates.
Hi, I'm Mark Robert Gordon. I appreciate what everybody, or what the vast majority here are here for, and like the person who spoke about the library funding, I'm speaking about a firefighter or a policeman issue today. And I'm here on behalf of the Friends of Phoenix Public Art. It is a new not-for-profit that supports the public arts in the city of Phoenix, arts that are throughout the city, 180 projects, some of which are nationally known, have gotten awards nationwide. The city has restored, partially restored in this budget, $50,000 of the arts grants program, and we appreciate that. However, the public arts that are here, our statues, our paintings, our things that bring value to the city, need to be maintained. We all need to be maintained. You can have things that are beautiful. You can have things that bring education and environment and people to the city and bring tax dollars to the city that help support revenues for all of our services. But if you don't maintain them, what's the point of having them? The current budget that is proposed has restored $49,000 of a $100,000 budget. And the $100,000 is needed. If you don't restore it, it decays. And if it decays, it's not going to be of use, and we're going to have to pay more, or we're going to lose the attractions that we have. So we appreciate everything that everybody is saying. I can say that some of our, this is a new not-for-profit to support the Office of Arts and Culture. Some of our new board members include firefighter Daniel Valenzuela, a councilman, as well as former councilman Tom Simplot, and a whole bunch of community leaders and business leaders who know that we can bring people into this city that increase our tax revenues if we keep the quality of life as well. It's not a zero-sum game with what most of you are fighting for today, and personally I appreciate that. But we also need $51,000 more in our arts maintenance budget without cost to the arts grants that you're giving. This is for things we already own. All of us own it. We just want it maintained. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ashley Mates. While she comes up, I have a card from Phil, I think it says Phil Eno, who wished not to speak but says, why wasn't there an option to restore all of the 4.2 wages that the firefighters have taken since 2010? Ms. Mates?
I'm a representative from AFSCME Local 2960, and I'm here to ask the city management to restore civilian pay. Our members work really hard every day as advocates for this beautiful city, and we're asking you to show some leadership in restoring what's not unprecedented, what's not unreasonable, it's not even crazy, it's just what they deserve. Budgets are moral documents. And when you look at the City of Phoenix budget, you can see where their morals are, and you can see where their leadership's morals are, and it is not with the city employees. It is not with these firefighters, and it is not with these police officers. So all we are asking is for you to stand up with these wonderful civilians, these wonderful sworn brothers and sisters, and restore what's rightfully theirs.
Thank you, Ms. Mates. Our next speaker is Steve Berline. And then after Mr. Berline will be Mary Axelrod.
My name's Steve Berline. I'm a captain with the Phoenix Fire Department. I've been with Phoenix for 26 years now. Spent 4 years in Scottsdale as a firefighter. So I can tell you, as a 30-year firefighter now, our profession has never been more dangerous. I can speak for our police officers. Their profession has never been more dangerous. And we're asking for restorations. But real quick, I want to thank you, Councilman DeCiccio, for having us, and city staff. We appreciate your time. 4.2 in concessions. We just want that restored. We took those concessions voluntarily. It was the right thing to do. The city had a budget deficit, and we helped them out. But now there's a surplus, and the city wants to do other things, and they should do other things, but not on the backs of our concessions. With these EPCRs, the electronic logbooks for firefighters, and the body cameras for police officers, the road up the mountain, parks are very important to us. Libraries are very important to us. Community centers are very important to us. But we shouldn't have to pay for these ourselves, not with our concessions. We should have our concessions restored, give all employees 4.2%, like Councilman DeCiccio agrees. Give us our 4.2% back, and then find another way to fund all those important things. That's the right thing to do. That's city leadership, and that's what our mayor and council needs to step up and do. That's all we're asking for, just our concessions back. We are running 40,000 calls a year more today than we were 4 years ago. We're down 72 firefighters. That's a total of 5 engine companies. We are literally doing more with less. And we're doing it. We're doing it strong. You know for a fact, Councilman, how much we love our citizens, our family members. We take care of everybody. We love this city. We're doing it for the right reason. And all we're asking is for a little bit of restoration. That's not too much to ask for. So we appreciate if you consider that. And again, thank you for your time.
And thank you, Steve, for all that you do. And also thank you for the way actually all the labor unions have handled this meeting. I got to tell you, it's very appreciative. I know it can be very contentious, and this is not an easy issue. Just so you look at going back to what we talked about earlier too, there is a way, I believe, for you to get what you want. I may not be fully supportive of it, but there is a way to do that and not also put this on the backs of a property tax increase. I'm going to tell you, if you end up going toward the property tax increase, they've already done some polling on it, 79% very opposed to it, 13% are in favor of it. So I don't know who those 13%, maybe it's all in the room here and that's about it. But at the end of the day, there are other ways to do this financially that you can win, get what you want, and not put this on the backs of the taxpayers either. But unfortunately, if you look at the model that was created up here, it's an either or. And you're going to set yourselves up for a failure on that. But go ahead, Steve. Sure. Yeah, you can ask. Pardon me? Yeah, it was done through, I'll tell you who it is. No, I know. I only got it from Jim Waring. He told me some of it. So, and I know that was done. I know there was polling done on it already. So, but it's intuitive too. I mean, if you go and talk to the normal public that's out there that's just really not here today, that's really involved, if you ask them about a property tax increase, they're going to say no. Now, if you tie it to police and fire, I don't know what that ends up doing. I think it was just a simple yes or no poll, but at the end of the day, it's still a big number.
Okay. Next speaker is Mary Axelrod, and this is actually the last card I've got, so if anyone else wants to speak, this is your last call to get your speaker card in. Ms. Axelrod?
Sorry, I'll mess it up. Don't worry, I won't sing. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak in support of the Phoenix Police and Fire Department. I'm a resident of Ahwatukee and have been for almost 20 years. I also come from a family whose roots are deep in public safety and serving the community. I'm a public school teacher. My dad is a retired police captain who served the public for over 30 years. My brother's a 19-year veteran of the Phoenix Police Department, and my husband has served the Phoenix Fire Department for almost 20 years. I hold these professions in the highest regard because what I've experienced as a child, as a sister, and as a wife. I know firsthand what these men and women do to protect and serve our community day in and day out. Their commitment to serve is not only courageous and admirable, but selfless. Everyday firefighters and police officers are risking their lives and exposing themselves physically and emotionally to situations that most of us would never want to encounter in our lifetime. These first responders are team players and work together for mutual goals. In 2009, when our city faced a recession, once again, these admirable men and women stepped up for the betterment of our community and to take the burden off the taxpayers by taking pay cuts. These pay cuts impacted their families, such as my own, but not only the reduction of pay, but the increased cost of health insurance and the impacts of inflation. Our families now have about 18% less buying power than we did in 2010. So not only are first responders working for less pay, but the demands, stresses, and dangers of their jobs have increased. If you read the newspaper or watch the news, you're aware that violent crimes have increased and firefighters are responding to significantly more calls. Meanwhile, the police department is operating with 561 less sworn officers than in 2009, and the fire department is operating with 160 less employees since that time as well. So my husband, brother, and other first responders have done their part and upheld their commitment to protect and serve the citizens of the City of Phoenix, with the understanding that when the city's economic strength improved, their pay would be restored. I want to shed light on the fact that first responders are not asking for a raise. Now that the city has recovered from the recession and the city's general fund revenues have returned to record levels and leading the nation in economic recovery, we are asking for the city to uphold their end of the bargain and restore their pay to what they were promised 6 years ago. Our first responders have saved the city nearly $500 million since 2010, and by reinstating their 4.2% pay, it would cost the city $44 million to restore the compensation cut, and that only seems fair considering they saved the city nearly $500 million in a time of need. Therefore, I'm asking you to hold true to your promise and reinstate the 4.2% increase in pay that you owe to the first responders and their families. I appreciate your support and know that if your family felt the impacts of the pay cuts that our families have, that you'd be motivated to speak on their behalf as well and stand up for what is right. The first responders abided by their contracts knowing in good faith that the city would do the same for them when the time came. Well, the time is now. Please abide by your word and fully restore our firefighters and police officers' pay. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I think it was pretty loud and clear what the majority of the people at this room would like to see. Again, this is just a process. This is the trial budget. It doesn't mean that this is the way it's going to be. Again, I would emphasize strongly that you don't put an us versus them, and them could be the taxpayers that are out there. Everyone here is a taxpayer too. Frank reminds me of that repeatedly. I understand it, but I'm using it as a different way, that there are individuals out there that if you look at a property tax increase, it could have a really negative impact, especially those that are seniors. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way when you're looking at a $60 million surplus. Even with those one-time costs, there are ways to make things work within it if people are willing to do that. One of the areas, right off the bat, you heard me say this at the very beginning. Ken, you didn't hear it at the beginning, but it's about the body cameras. We are heading in that direction. We are, we're a big city. We're going to have body cameras. But do we have to have a body camera on every single officer that we have? No. The ones that are on patrol make sense. But then again, it doesn't make sense when you're looking at all the expenses that are associated with the body cameras. Would the public rather see a police officer on the street, or a firefighter, or a dispatcher being there, or a body camera? I would say that it's overwhelmingly, and I'm just guessing, it's not a poll, but over 90% of the public would literally say, blow off the body cameras. I'd rather see more officers on the street. I'd rather see our officers taken care of. I'd rather see our firefighters or dispatchers are taken care of. Intuitively, whether you're a liberal, conservative, whatever side of the aisle you are in, that's where you would be. So there are things in this budget that I believe can be pared down and reauthorized in other areas. But if you head down this path, this is more toward the labor groups that are here, of the city pushing you for this property tax increase, because that's how it normally is, you'll end up seeing a citizens' revolt on that. I really believe it. They could come back and refer that back, or you'll see something that you're not going to like. There are ways to make this thing work for everybody. So if you head down that path, I think it's going to be problematic. There's more than enough money to make some things work, maybe not for everybody's happiness, but there are ways to make that work. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Appreciate all the efforts that you do. Appreciate all the work that you do for the city of Phoenix. And we'll see you at the next budget hearing. I'm sure I'll see most of you out there again.
You have been watching a community budget hearing held recently in Phoenix. For questions, comments, or ideas, please visit phoenix.gov or call 602-262-4800. You can also send feedback through social media by using #PhoenixBudget. This video can also be seen online at phoenix.gov/PHXTV or youtube.com/City of Phoenix AZ.